Oh, you're missing one. When that happens, I just have to stick a block of wood in there. We'll do the backs first because they're easy. The old ones we have to reuse this part right here and that part right there. And the new ones, you get a new strut and then you get springs too, and we have to assemble them with the parts. As you can see, part of it is missing. We need to change this part from the car, the original. We have to take the old strut out of the car and then disassemble it. It's pretty easy on the rear. There's not much in the way. That's pretty tight. I'm going to need a breaker bar. There we go. Disconnect these rubber things here. Disconnect the wear sensor, wheel speed sensor, and brake line. Wiggle it on out. It comes right out. Okay, that's one. Whoops. I'm gonna break out the big guns. Harbor Freight, 80 bucks. The mother of all impact guns. There we go. They tend to get caught up here, so you have to kind of guide it out. Alright, that's two. That's the rear. I always like to check for mushroom strut towers. Some of the cars, when they go over bumps, these tend to deform the metal. This car looks pretty good, but some of them, they actually kind of go up and it bends when you hit bumps. This car looks like it's lucked out, and it looks pretty much flat. If not, you take a big 2x4 a giant hammer and smash them back into place. Most of the minis I've looked at have a little bit of mushrooming, but this one looks pretty good. Okay, so here, same thing. You need to disconnect the brake and wheel speed sensor. And the end link is attached to the strut itself, so we need to disconnect the top of this one. There's a hex key hole in the middle of the nut, the shaft that you can use to remove it, but you can also just get a 17mm wrench on the back side of this. It's got an indentation to do that. Put it in the back like that. Okay. You see there's a flat spot here on the shaft itself where you can put a 17mm wrench on it once it rotates into place. Okay, that's out of the way. Sometimes you have to hit this with a hammer to get it to come out. This one just fell right out. And then what you do is rock it. If you push a little bit, you can get it to come out. Just need to pry it up, shorten it just a tad. There you go. And disconnect the top. You can take off two, no problem. The third one you want to hold the strut because it's going to fall down. So reach underneath and grab the strut. Or have a friend help you. And then you just guide it on out. Making sure not to get it caught on any of these wires. Same thing, disconnect the brake, wheel speed sensor and wear indicator. Remove the bottom bolt. Remove the end link. This one's a little stuck, so you just give it a tap with a hammer on the steering knuckle and it falls right out. Okay. Okay, so now we can start swapping over parts. The rear shocks are completely interchangeable. It doesn't matter left or right. Watch my other video on how to get these out of the packaging. Shiny. And they come with a couple of adjustment tools as well, which we'll use to adjust the ride height. Yeah, these are kind of mid-grade street shocks. They're height adjustable, but the adjustment of the height and the adjustment of the spring rebound rate are not independent. So the shorter you make them, the tighter the springs are, so the ride gets stiffer as you as you lower the car. We're going to have to adjust them as close as we can to the stock suspension, and then once we get them back on the car, we'll kind of look at what the car looks like and raise them or lower them as needed. And the fun part is taking apart the old ones. Everyone thinks you need a pesky spring compressor, but no need for that. These are mini shocks, and because they're mini shocks, they're not really under much pressure at all. And we can actually just use the impact gun to just pop them loose, as long as you're not standing where the spring is going. And it's a good idea to also look at the strut tower bearing and a bushing here to make sure there's no tearing. Both of these look pretty good. I have seen some minis with higher mileage where these are cracked, so it's a good time to replace them if you're going to do it. And you can inspect this part while it's on the car. Just look through the hole here, so you can inspect the part while it's on the car and buy the part in advance. So if you have an impact tool, this is super easy. You just point the shock in a direction where you don't mind destroying whatever's behind it. Put the gun on and loosen. If you don't have an impact gun, yeah, you're probably going to want to use a spring compressor. Compress the spring, put a socket down through here with a hex key going through the center, and then take it apart that way. See, it doesn't even go that far. There it goes. All right, they're all taken apart. Just make sure you keep all the bits in the correct order so you know how to put them back together. Also, if you're going to lower the car by a fair amount, you'll want to cut this bump stop. So when the spring fully compresses, when you hit this, you're going to get a real harsh jolt into the car. So it might be a good idea to cut off. If you're going to lower it by an inch, then cut off, about that much, for example. And these can be just cut with a razor blade. They're just hard foam. And if you ever think you're going to put the car back to stock, just hold on to this, and then you can reassemble it later on. I'm going to put the new ones together. When you put them together, there's actually a groove here where the spring is supposed to line up. So you want to make sure you rotate it until it seats. And as you can see, the spring is actually pretty close. So you can just compress them by your hand and hand screw the nut onto the top. And if that doesn't work, measure how far this is right now, and then you can lower this and then raise it back up again after you put everything together. So looks like it's 13 centimeters. So I'll just run this down. Put a little bit of silicone spray lube on these just to help you to assemble it. Silicone's good because when water gets in there, it'll wash it out, and so it's not going to be moving around on its own after the car is put back together. Okay, almost there. Another half centimeter. Okay. One. Don't forget the little washer. We'll hit it with the gun just to make sure it's nice and tight. Okay.
Okay, now on to the front shocks.
$25. So the front, you don't need a bump stop. One thing I do like to do though, this dust boot tends to come loose. So I like to put a zip tie on it just to hold it in place. So these are H&R Street coilovers, I believe. I think probably all the H&Rs are the same. There. Zip ties are good for everything. Same thing for the front, just put it all together. Put them back in. This is the left one, or the right one, sorry. And of course they're shorter now, so they're going to be easier to put in than the old ones. One thing we need to watch out for actually is sometimes these new springs will shrink in size over time. They might have a take a little bit of time to settle in. So if anything, we want to adjust them a tad long, and then come back in about 4 or 5 days or a week and see if they've settled in or not, and then lower or raise them at that point. And it's not too hard to do. We can do it with the wheels on the car, but we do have to raise the car up to do it. And if this is tight to go in, sometimes you can stick a screwdriver in here and just pry it apart, not a screwdriver, but a pry bar, and pry it apart just a little bit to make it easier to slide in. Hopefully it'll just go right in though. If you get the angle right, it should go right in. Yeah, this one's tight. I'm going to have to pry it a little bit. Either pry it or put a wedge in there. Yeah, I'm going to have to hammer a wedge in there. Come on. There it goes. Make sure this one's good and tight. If it's loose, the car will be clunking around. I've seen this happen before. You don't want the brake line hitting anything, so if that happens, you just need to bend this piece until it's the right angle. So just bend it until it doesn't hit. There, that's much better. You never want that to hit. Reattach the end link. Reattach the end links and make sure they're good and tight. Again, if these are loose, you're going to hear clunking. Okay. Another trick you can try is to lift up the control arm with a floor jack, compress it a little bit, and then tap it, and it'll slide on in. There it goes. That's the front. So these don't have direction, but there's an angle to the hat here. And you want to make it so that the shock is kind of angled out, but that the connector bit is turned inward like this. Put them up there and hand screw the top
threads.
All right, now we can put the wheels back on and see what it looks like. So you can use the that's pretty slammed. We do need to roll it back and forth a little bit to allow the car to settle, because it kind of goes tippy toes when you first put it down, and you need to roll it so the wheels come back out to their natural position. This is a CVT Mini. I like to tease the owner about it, but I think she likes it. It's actually faster, you know, CVTs, because they don't have to, there's no shift lag. It just kind of, it's like a scooter. It just has a constant power curve. There we go, put it in neutral. So I just roll the car back and forth a little bit. Okay, that actually looks quite good. Let's close the bonnet so you can see what you got. That's a little low in the front, I would say. Okay, we got 600. 630. Yeah, so it's about 1.25 inches high in the front, or low in the front. 620 and 595. To adjust the fronts are quite easy. You can actually just put the floor jack in there, and then you can get access to the adjustment rings quite easily. That's pretty darn low. So So when I lift the car off the ground, the adjustment rings are visible right there, so super easy to adjust on the front. So just back this one off. Got 25 mil to the bottom ring. You won't know until I do both sides because the sway bar evens it out. Okay, so right now we're at about 18, so I want to go up to about 27. Okay, we were at 25 on the other side, so I'm going to go just about 3 more millimeter because the driver's side is heavier. Okay, and the back one, I remember this side was a little bit lower than the other side, so I'll raise that one by a little bit. Superficial jack stand, just so in case the jack gives out. Boys and girls always use jack stands. Yeah, I heard a story about a guy who was working on a car in his yard and jack gave out and it killed him. So I think he was like in his, I don't know if the jack gave out. I think it was actually, he was on floor jacks or jack stands, but he's working like in his front yard or something. Yeah, he probably had like, I don't know, plywood or something to keep it from giving out, but yeah, make sure you have a nice firm surface. Saving money in your cars doesn't do any good if you're lying under it. Let's see, how does it look now? So now we've got 603 on this side, 605 on this side, 630, 630.